Okay, it looks like the stream is live now. Need to check that really quick. Okay. So that's basically on YouTube and Twitch. Okay, let's check me really quick. Okay, I guess it's fine now working now. Okay, so what I did yesterday, in the last stream session, what I like in the last stream session, I left with still a bug in the change instructions optimizer, and I sort of said that I'm going to debug and try to fix the bug off stream, because on the one hand, it's probably rather boring to watch me like investigating the files and code execution. On the other hand, it's also like these types of problems usually need quite a lot of concentration. And so if I describe in voice what I'm doing and thinking about, that of course slows down the thinking quite considerably, and that's a little bit preventing me from fixing the bug, even potentially even finding the problem and finding a solution for it. But the problem now is, if I do it off stream, then I don't have a video recording of that particular time span where I did the bug fixing. And I also have some, there's no continuancy between the, like there's a gap in how the code developed and what thoughts I had and what I was sort of considering and working on, and that's a little bit bad. So I like my current, like, I guess my idea is to not do these kind of things off stream anymore, even if it requires a lot of concentration, but rather do a silent stream where I basically still stream what I do, but remain silent, because then I can later explain what I did there, if in case there's in case there are any questions or something like that, or if I want to refer back to a particular section, then I can still later sort of remember and reconstruct what I was doing there, right? And of course that's not much helpful, but still people can pop in, provide some help, or like ask questions or whatever they want to do, or just say hi. That's fine, of course. And like maybe that makes more sense than doing too much off stream, especially for projects that have portions of them streamed and recorded. So that's basically one of the ideas and considerations I have now about like doing things off stream. So basically what I did is so like I try to describe it a little bit after the fact, afterwards. Let's see, how can I remove, like resize the window. So let's see, I should have some to-do markers here. One of the main, no, that's not the one. One of the main problems with my code, as it were, was the delete instructions. And there I made a mistake of using the current position. If there's a delete count, I was using the current position as is. And after the deletion has been sort of executed on the virtual text, that means that the cursor at the end of a delete operation is in front of the text that was deleted. And if I use that last position after the deletion and then also have the negative deletion count, that leads to the situation that I not only have the position of the deletion needs to be at the end of the text that's supposed to be deleted, because if the deletion count is negative, we go forwards towards the start of the text. And if the last position of the deletion is used here, that means that from the text that was supposed to be deleted, I'm going into text that needs to remain. Like basically what I'm describing here is if I say, hello world, how are you today? So like if I have a delete instruction from here to like, that says something like delete these characters here, and that's the position of the deletion instruction, and then I have the negative count on how much characters need to be deleted, and after that the virtual cursor position is here at the end. So if I then supply another like if I execute that and I do not store this like this position for the deletion, but the last position of the cursor, that means the negative deletion will like delete this text, and that of course needs to remain in place. So that's basically what I did there, because I probably was tired. That's quite a usual condition here, and I just used the current position without thinking too much about it. And of course I can use the deletion count that collapsed all of these subsequent deletions into a larger count, and can use that from the current position to go back to where the entire deletion started and write a proper deletion instruction here. So that means that I can like remove now the old buggy text, a buggy code I wrote there. And that one as well, because they're sort of from the same type. And what I also needed to do here in the that's the reading and addition instruction. If it's not filtered, then I had the issue that like the deletion count leading to writing a deletion instruction to the output was down here as an else if of the SB collector, because my thinking was if the position differs and I have a movement, I want to clear the collector and also the deletion count if I have any. And after that I had to check the deletion count another time, because if I change from like a deletion instruction to an addition and I still have a deletion count that wasn't written to output yet, even if the position doesn't changes, or especially if it doesn't change, I have here, if this branch isn't executed and deletion count isn't, like deletion isn't written to output and deletion count still remains to be set and not 0, then I need to make sure that I write the deletion to output in that case as well. And that was a duplication of the code, because I had like handling of deletion instruction, like deletion count here and also here in basically if the position and current position was equal. So basically I decided to move it up here and have it handled at first, regardless if position is the same or not, because I need to write it to output anyway, because now I'm entering and handling an addition, right? So that's the one thing. And also it was sort of like important to also correct the use of current position right here. That was basically another instance of that error of mine. And what's sort of special and new is like this else case. So what happened was basically if I had still some errors in the resulting optimized output then after these corrections, because if I have, like as the comment keeps tries to explain here for later understanding why this needs to be the way it is, it could well be that I do an addition and delete the exact same amount of characters that just have been written, just delete them after they have been added, the exact same characters, and then the current position ends up where the addition started after the deletion operation. And the problem with that was, of course, that if I start to write new text after that, that's fine, because then the string builder collector can collect the new addition, of course. But if I then have a mouse move or like a keyboard move, then this code would have triggered and the collector would have been empty, because like the deletion removed all of the newly added characters again. And also the deletion count would be empty because deletion count was never counted, because all of the deletion instructions were basically removed and subtracted from the characters that were in the collector. So the deletion count didn't get a chance to actually get incremented. And if I then had the move here and the else, so like the collector and the earlier deletion count that was down here, both would be 0. And then I would end up, without getting a chance to set the new current position, then I would have ended up with the old current position and not the new one that was indicated by the next instruction that indicates the move. And then I would start to add the newly found observed characters from the new instruction and add it to the last incorrect position that was still stored from the addition that was followed by a deletion. So these were the main errors there. I mean that one that is like sort of new. I like the other ones that sort of like moving the deletion count handling up here. That's more of a code optimization, I guess. The incorrect handling of the current position, that's sort of just some sloppy error of mine. Of course, that was sort of like easy to, yeah, I mean, that's sort of like, I mean, once found, it made a lot of sense to fix it in all of these places where delete instructions are written, except the ones that just get directly written to output because they are not filtered, not optimized. But this down here, that's sort of like a special case. I had to experiment and like figure that out a little bit. So that's basically what I was doing there yesterday. So let's see. And so let's see if I still have a. No, I don't have more hints for myself to show what I have changed since the last time. So I guess I can compile it really quick. Come on. And execute it. Wait. Change instructions optimizer, the obligatory job file, the obligatory result info.xml. So now I have a new output file. That one isn't in any way like, I mean, that just looks like the ordinary optimized output file, of course. Like, I mean, it's a little bit, I mean, it's like sort of like not easy or possible to figure out if that's correct or not, but what makes a lot of sense to look at would be to use this output file in my sort of what do I have here? I hope there's nothing. So that's how I worked on it yesterday. I just have my downloaded package a little bit modified here, so I can like put our new output file in here and call it output concatenated, because that's how the whole workflow is set up. And if I now run the like modified shell script in order to execute the transformation, just because I'm sort of like lazy and it's easy to do it this way. Now we can have a look at what the optimizer produced. In case you remember, last time we still had, without optimization, had 181 instructions or changes unoptimized, and with the optimization it's reduced to 109. So maybe I should also like show the old, like the original output file. Maybe that makes sense. So I have one output file here, that's like the new one, and let me just really quick generate the other one so we can compare the two, like the old input file unoptimized. Let me just really quick use that as input as well. Needs output concatenated. Oh, did I forget to? Oh yeah, I need of course to remove the old file. Output concatenated. So if I execute that now, then we end up with the two files and are set up to compare them. So that's like the original unoptimized output here. So let's start with the first instruction here. I guess that one is still the same, right? As you see, maybe I should even like let's do it this way. We do some sort of split screen here because then it's much easier to track what's going on with the two different versions of the revision history. So like at this point they are still both the same, I guess, right? So like that's sort of still the same. And then I start to remove the original introduction to the text. I guess that's still the same. And now, as you see, like similar to the output concatenator, the original version recording, revision recording only has like my start to add this text here. But the optimized version already collapsed all of these instructions in a longer statement. Like there could be quite a lot in this single instruction that was removed and hidden because it's like not needed or important in any way. So let's see how it develops. So like you see, then I deleted it there because maybe I made up my mind. As you see down here, it ended up to being I've managed to implement, and here I was still So like this change I did here, that was completely removed because it's not I can still keep this file and like have every keystroke I did still in the fully recorded revision history. But if I'm going to publish one, maybe it's not too important if I did some experiments with the DE and stuff like that, and if I removed and added like until I finally arrived at the final version, so I can optimize them into more collapsed instructions, more optimized instructions that pretend that I wrote it perfectly in the first go. And that's not too much of a like I don't want to pretend or fake that. I don't need it for pretending that I wrote it perfectly in the first place. But the point of it is, if I have a server if I finally start to write a server that refuses to accept uploads of files and then do heuristical diffs for version control and comparing versions, the idea would be that the server would only accept change instructions that continue the last or the current state of the document by accepting new change instructions that modify this existing text. So it wouldn't be possible to publish a new version, except the uploader and the editor and the tool would exactly describe via change instructions how to do the change to the new version. So that's basically the idea. And on submission of these changes, on the server side, I can never know if the writer wrote it in one perfect go or how many changes the writer did. And so like a writer can always cheat and lie and say he made only the minimal optimum perfect changes that are required to get from the earlier version to the new version the writer intends. So therefore I, of course, sort of with this optimizer are trying to help that particular scenario and only have the optimizer to allow the optimization of these instructions. And in some cases, maybe I don't need all of like the little details like changing stuff like this back and forth because I want to save storage, or maybe it's not important because, you know, like no writer should be forced to have somebody looking over his shoulder what sort of like a writer. I don't care if he's a good typist, if he or she is a good typist, right? I don't know. I don't care how many characters have been typed and removed again, and how long it did take, and how long and how many changes needed to be made in order to arrive at a version that the writer is fine with. I'm fine if the writer only declares how he gets from an already published version to the new version he intends to publish. So that's fine for me. And so nobody needs to fear that he or she is spied on. That's perfectly fine for me. And that's why I'm working on the optimizer in order to get there. Because like in the end, if I have like a document like this, like a text like this, we could well imagine that like all of these removal and additions and stuff like that, all of that gets collapsed and optimized into one version that starts from empty text and has like the entire string as if written in one perfect go. And if that's published and then another version gets added, then of course I only want to see and learn about the changes that are required to get to the new intended version. And that of course can also be in one perfect go, only the optimal deletions that are needed to remove what needs to be removed, and only including the perfect additions without any editing and like back and forth, but just like the parts that I really need in order to insert and add the new text that should be in the new final version that gets published. So that's basically the idea here. So if I progress a little bit with the change instructions, so this one is like I remove the space, and in the optimized version, I think that's the optimized version, is it? Let's see what's going on here. Okay, I loaded both into the browser memory so that I cannot, but like I mean at the moment it looks like, let's see what's happening here. I removed the space, I added the space. Is it the same here too, or are there some collapsed? Oh yeah, of course, that's probably what I did. And that's something that's a little bit surprising, that isn't removed from the optimization, but as the deletions are destructive operations, I still have to keep the deletion instructions, because if let's see what is the reason, if I why is that? I guess yeah, I think I sort of see why. So like the point is, this space was added quite some time ago, and then I remove it, and then I start with the like, and I need to remove it in order to be able to, like, I need to keep the removal instruction here, because I like earlier I worked let's see, so I wrote this stuff here, and after this addition I basically maybe it could also be like with the delete key, I end up at the followed by the quotation mark, and then the problem is with the next insertion, I can't know if I'm writing to start a totally new like long passage there, like long sentence here, or if it's just adding the same character again, because I'm not comparing, I'm not optimizing on the level of character comparison or something like that, because that could be another optimization mode or feature or option, right, in the job file, to specify that removals and additions that are of equal character, that they can be optimized, collapsed, right? But for the current implementation, I cannot know if like I'm going to add like a long text after adding the space again, and the space is just like an arbitrary, basically like just not related to the earlier version of the deletion. I could as well start with an A or with a tab or something like that, or with a dash or something. And in these terms, I do not compare the characters, And because there could be an addition like this, I need to remove the old space and then add whatever comes after that, because the intention and sort of the structure of these changes are I remove the old character and then replace it by a whole bunch of maybe potentially different characters. And that information needs to be preserved, of course. So now there are some boring things like these that are like sort of replacing these spaces with underscores, right? So that's like sort of not really interesting here. Then I remove this portion. I think that's still the same. That's also still the same. Oh, see, and here I have like, I guess that's another optimization in here. Implement there was removed, and here I add get there, and here it turns out that like this is the optimized version, which magically already knows that I wanted to write get there, and up here it turns out that I initially wrote get a, right? And then made up my mind, removed the A and added the there. And because all of that was done at the same cursor position, subsequent cursor position operations, instructions there, it was able to optimize that into a single addition. So if I publish the optimized version, the world will never learn that I like sort of had some trouble there and had to figure that one out. Now, let's see if I... So, and in the optimized version, I continue to write at the end of it. And in the original version, it turns out that I sort of thought that I should add this portion of text, but then decided that it also doesn't make a lot of... maybe that I potentially want to leave it out. So it was removed again. So that's information I can, of course, omit, because that's of no effective... I mean, if I really want to keep the entire history of all text variants and versions I ever did down to the single character in keystroke, okay, I can keep it, of course. But if I'm only interested in the how to get from the earlier version to the from a previous version to the following version to the final or current version, then of course this information isn't really required in terms of effective changes that have any impact at in terms of arriving at the final result. So it can of course be omitted. So I guess that's basically it for demonstrating how the optimization works so far. The current optimization that I have implemented here, that has been implemented. So like here it's sort of like I guess it's sort of clear that like all of these were also collapsed and then found in the, and like this is far longer because it turns out that even with some operations of deletion and addition, it turns out that I wrote a longer piece without movement, mouse movement or jumps. So that can of course be collapsed into a single operation until and sort of like this is what the optimization does for now. And of course one can ask what's the difference to the change instructions concatenator. The concatenator will concatenate subsequent additions and subsequent deletions, but will not try to collapse change instructions of different types into less instructions. So it will always maintain the type and only concatenate instructions that are of the same operation type and instruction type. So that's one difference. So if it were only about that one, the concatenation could be added as an option to the change instructions optimizer, because like that's like just a regular optimization. We are already doing some sort of concatenation here as well, of course. That's quite obvious, of course. But there's also the difference that the change instructions concatenator is sort of performance-wise. It can, if I discover an addition, I can immediately write the characters to the output stream, because I know I will continue to write characters to output for subsequent additions, except I encounter a delete instruction or if there's a jump. So the concatenator is optimized in that way. That's something the optimizer cannot do, because it always needs to collect the characters in the string builder collector, and also for the deletions, the deletion count, because it can never know if there's a subsequent, after an addition, if there's a subsequent deletion that would just remove characters from the end of the string builder collector. And that's of course a difference, which for now I want to maintain and keep. I mean, it's not too important, but it also means that still after the concatenation, that's only for removal of unnecessary separation of instructions, but it will also maintain, like the concatenator will keep and retain all of like every single keystroke and instruction to be reconstructed, and that's something the optimizer doesn't do. That's a destructive operation that removes and destroys information. That's what the concatenator doesn't do, because like concatenation, that's sort of semantically equivalent in terms of preservation of information. And like I thought that there was still one little like this one is this change here. I was a little bit confused, yeah, right? In the optimized version, you probably would wonder, like I write wrong here, then remove it and then add it again. I mean, I already explained the reasons for it, but if we get to that stage, where is it? Where's the wrong? Then you'll see what is, like here's the wrong. I added it as a part of a longer sentence and a longer addition. And like, I mean, this doesn't even show up at all, that this part was here in the end, because like I later continued after the end here with some other text, and this is like entirely irrelevant. But then I jumped to the wrong, because that's of course from the end here. I did a mouse movement to wrong, of course, and then I thought maybe wrong is the incorrect term here, and I came up with incorrect, and then I made up my mind and think like incorrect sounds a little bit formal, so I added wrong again, right? So I'm, for reasons of like I cannot know how much like I'm going to add here, I have this strange, I mean the optimizer doesn't look at like the actual character comparisons, character equivalence, so that's why I have this strange operation here, and of course that needs to be optimized away in a different mode, and then I continue writing. But that's mostly because the mouse move, and in the end it turns out that I just left it in the form as I wrote it initially, and that's sort of like indicated in the optimized version that I tried to do something with the wrong, but eventually made up my mind that I just leave it as I wrote it originally, and that's sort of like how to interpret changes like this. If there were one more character or something, like it would be immediately obvious that I added one more character or something, or fixed a typo or something by removing the old term and adding the new, especially if I don't, especially because it's not heuristical diff, it actually knows if I removed the entire word, and not only calculates that only one single character was changed, But if that's sort of my habit and my thinking, not thinking about like individual characters, but like removing the entire word, that's of course what's recorded with this sort of like revision tracking, change tracking editor, text editor, that preserves this kind of information that can also help to like get in the mind of like how the writing actually happened. Not that this is too important, but this is like a different strategy for indicating how to change texts and create new versions from the original version, and variants with branching and merging eventually one day. Okay, so that's basically this part. And one thing that's still missing in the end, if I go to last, there will still be one difference, because like if we look at the end, it turns out that there's a difference here, and the reason for that is that in the result that was generated from the from the optimization, if we go 2 steps back here, oh no, I wonder if the, oh yeah, I guess that's the addition that was recorded here. The next one will be the deletion of this, because like the announcement, I removed the entire idea of announcement also in the title of the thing. So they are equivalent up to this point, optimized version and the non-optimized original version. And if I click next here, I see that I added the final title of this text file here, or like the of this link, and that's not in the optimized version. And the reason is pretty obvious and straightforward, and I think that's the work I'm going to do today. And then after that, let's see. So this is basically optimizer, yes, of course. So what's missing, of course, after like all of the instructions have been processed, it can very well be that there are still some characters in the string builder collector that haven't been written to output, as well as the deletion count that hasn't been written to output either. So that's what needs to be done at the very end, after all of the instructions have been processed and optimized. And that's like one of the common, pretty common, I guess I'm just going to copy some, oh wait, that's pretty common to forget about like the last instruction after working too long with all of the handling that happens on the actual elements and on the input. So SB collector length, and like here's the question, like with else if, right, I sort of try to, like the program flow is already indicating that the string builder collector cannot contain characters while there's still something in the deletion count. And that's sort of like, I mean, that makes a lot of sense logically, because whenever there's a move or something, like these need to be cleared, of course. And if like, I mean, the code handling that is supposed to make sure that these two conflict, that not both can be set at the same time. Now the problem is, if I have an error in here, maybe I want to detect it with the help of checking the condition if both are set, right? And then maybe provide an error message. Or even if that's not the case, I would want to give it a chance to write it to the write an addition to the output as well as the deletion to the output, because that wouldn't be correct, because like I don't know which one needs to come first, but it would at least offer the chance to identify such a case, because the output would be corrupt. And that's maybe something big, because like in other than that, if there's a error and still a bug in the program flow above, I would like only omit like only output one of these two instructions, because they are mutually exclusive, but that would be incomplete, and just omit some information from being written to output, right? And if I write both to them, they might not have the correct order and therefore lose the information of the order and wouldn't allow to reconstruct the text. But it would still not omit characters, for example, that still are in the collector, or omit an entire deletion. So it can be fixed and corrected manually. And then it is harder to detect, of course, right? But who's going to check the end of the file and revision instruction stream anyway? And as this only happens at the end, I mean, I didn't add checks up here. Basically, before I do anything with the collector, I should check if the like here too, I should check if both of them are set, right? And they are else if as well. That's maybe one of the to-dos I could like remember for later. Let's see. Maybe I write it as a multi-line thing anyway. It makes even sense to indicate where the end of the, and for some reason the editor syntax highlighting thinks I'm doing some XML here, because like these Java doc comments, I guess they are sort of like parsed as XML or HTML or something, but I'm not going to escape them now, right? Because this is source code in a comment. I hope that doesn't, I mean, that shouldn't cause problems for the compiler, I guess, right? Should it? No. Okay. Okay, let's do it like this. And then, I mean, usually I was just thinking about like checking this condition down here and then do a throw construct termination or something like that, or not, like just, I mean, I could also write an informational message to the result information file and indicate a warning, right? But as I added it to do now, I'm sort of like a little bit lazy and hopefully want to go fast. So with the to do, I will also see that I have to do it not in this, not only in the occasion up above, but also at this location here. And I guess I can like do that later when I'm revisiting this code for improvement or adding new features. Then that's maybe a good time to do some of the to-dos, because also sometimes you like with fresh eyes, and it also makes new fun to, if like I need to fix a small thing like a typo or something, then it's always good to have some to-dos. Or like, I mean, like the common argument is that you never go back and work on the to-dos, but on the other hand, if you are checking in a new file and making some small change, that's a good opportunity to do one of the to-dos that weren't done in the original initial sort of release check-in, right? So let's see, I guess what I don't need anymore is resetting this stuff. And I think I can leave the other instructions here because they should be quite correct, I guess. Maybe I'm like sloppy and lazy and tired here as well, but I would just leave it like this for now and really quickly check and test it if that's sort of fine. Oh wait, that's not what I wanted to do. In here we are in the, like, that's the optimizer. Call the optimizer, and then I have a new output, and then I would want to I guess I can, like, I mean, okay, it doesn't, I guess it doesn't matter if I keep it or not. So output concatenated execute in there, like the shell script is adjusted to only do the transformation. So now I have this new one here. I guess this one was the upper one was the original unoptimized one. So if I now go to last and previous, that's what I've done here. So initially I wrote the announcement version of the link and file name, but this is already the deletion. I mean, this was in for some longer time here before I did something up here. Then I came back, removed the announcement variant here, and the next instruction is the very last instruction that just gets written because of this final handling of what still remains in the collector and deletion after all of the instructions have already been processed and optimized and written to output. I guess I cannot click on next anymore, right? Because that's basically it. So all I can do is reset it to the start, or I guess, I mean, some people who might have looked into this already, they might know about, like, if I set it to the first, I can also, like, there's also the always the auto version for just for not for effect, but for, like, I mean that doesn't make a lot of sense anyway, right? Because the I guess it should calculate how much characters are in there, and then depending on the amount of characters for deletion or addition, adjust the time it takes to do it, and it gets, like, this stuff gets really slow over time because I did it quick and dirty with some, like, I have, like, the virtual text and then have a second function that renders it in this form as color and inserting dots, and that's pretty performance wise, that's pretty, like, a lot of nonsense, of course, and I need to improve that. But, like, I mean, now in general, now I have done the optimizer, and the like the question now is, I mean, the optimizer is far from complete, of course, right? Because that's just one optimization approach or strategy that has been implemented other than concatenation, but concatenation is in a separate tool. That's a separate capability, hypertext capability, and the, like, of course I need to basically I need to test the filtering as well, so that I can do it selectively for ranges of instructions and not the entire file all the time. I need to check that that's sort of working. And other than that, what the optimizer really needs is like, I guess maybe it's also like checking like what was encountered with the where is it? Where's the wrong with like the removal and addition of the wrong to do character comparisons for equivalence of the instructions. The downside with this is I can't really do it because deletions are destructive operations. They don't preserve the characters that they delete. So I would need to introduce another string builder collector that records the characters that get deleted. So for subsequent additions, I can compare what has been deleted just a few instructions before and stuff like that to even optimize it further, because maybe the author doesn't want to show the world what he or she has done with some like these things, and it's also not of too much information for the reader and for the publication of the new version that it is indicated that for the wrong word there was removal and addition of the very same text, because that's not changing, that's not creating a new version before and after these operations, right? So that of course still could be optimized and probably should be optimized, and there should also be the option that collapses that's even more aggressively optimizing in terms of if I have like let's see, maybe after the filtering would collapse all of the changes that happen within the ranges in which editing takes place. Because for example, let's imagine I have like a text like this that's already published, that's in the recorded history, and there might have been quite some changes to create this one, but basically that's the version, the latest version I need to work on, and now I start to rewrite this paragraph. So I remove something, I add something, then I add some more at another place, I have some movement, I remove something and I add something more, right? And then if I'm going to optimize and publish that one, all of the operations might not need to preserve the order in which they happened, or maybe they need, or maybe they need not, but maybe, I mean, they could still preserve the order, but all of the like I could calculate that all of the all of the original text, like I could like collect all of the deletions and remove everything except the portions and pieces of text I want to keep, and maybe the entire paragraph might go away. And then I could collect together all of the additions, maybe while retaining the order or whatever, and like creating like the new text that ends up at that spot in the text. And I mean, that sounds like a little bit like the after the fact heuristical diffing, but if I do that for several blocks, right, if I keep working on this paragraph for quite some time and removal and additions, I could collapse that into a single deletion and to a single addition. If I continue to do it in another paragraph, right, I might collapse it into a single deletion and a single addition just as well, but I retain the order of the two, because like if I first start to work down here and then at the top, it wouldn't be that in the heuristical diff I see the I read from top to bottom and don't know in what order, if on what paragraph I worked first. But in like with this kind of optimization, as long as I remain in one, let's say, section of text and don't jump all over the document, it could collapse them and optimize them into single, like very optimized change instructions and retain the order in which I worked on these blocks of text. So that's probably the most aggressive one that would still be different from heuristical diff while retaining the order in which like there was some work happened on these changes of text. And that leads to to the what I described earlier, to the notion that maybe from the empty editor window to the text that actually gets published, I maybe end up with a single edition. And like with the filtering, I want to do this selectively, so I could do please collapse me all of the like I can sort of, especially for publishing these changes, I could before I publish and submit my changes, I could collapse them to the absolute minimum so they appear as single deletions and additions in an order if I sort of organized it properly. So that's one of the options, right? And that's especially interesting because that would remove the author from being observed and would just indicate the actual changes that need to be made from the current or earlier version to arrive at the new version. That's basically the idea. And of course, somebody can always lie and make up these instructions. I mean, there could be tools that allow to modify these instructions, right? For example, to define a new order, to rearrange the order. I mean, that's of course a little bit dangerous because the danger is that like the change instructions are dependent on the current version and current state of the text as in a virtual like the virtual version, what has been in the editor at that point in time, not the final version, right? So if there needs to be some movement, that could like mess up the whole thing, but maybe a special tool or text editor window or something might help and assist with that. Like also like the branching and merging, that's like a separate whole thing in its own that I need to work on eventually. But basically, okay, that's basically at least one improvement for the from the raw unoptimized instruction recording to the concatenated instruction recording to the to this particular optimization approach. And then that helps a little bit already. And the question is what to work on next. I mean, I guess there's no immediate, very urgent reason to continue to work on the optimizer. So what I could work instead is to either improve the text editor itself so that it can handle files, open existing files. That's something that doesn't work yet. Stuff like this, so that it becomes actually usable for like more normal people who don't who don't want to do all the manual technical, you know, sort of like one of my frequent sort of things I do manually is if I want to change an existing text and I need to add some more instructions, deletions or additions, I basically need to generate the last version that was in the editor with the change instruction executor, then copy that as the input txt plain text file. Then, because that gets loaded into the editor, so I can then record new changes, and these changes, because they don't know their earlier history of how they arrived at the state of the text that's in the input, then I need to copy these instructions back into the actual recorded version file. And the reason why I do that is because, like in my mind, maybe there should never be such a thing like a plain text file, because all of the plain text files, like every text would be comprised of the instructions of its creation and its versioning. So that's why the text editor doesn't have this feature yet, because like if I open a file that needs to be in the format of change instructions already, and then it would like execute all of the instructions to the last, or basically in a workflow call the change instructions executor, take the last stage, load that into the editor window for subsequent manipulation and editing and writing, and then add these new instructions to the input file that was already read, that was containing all the previous earlier instructions that led to the first version that was opened in the editor as the last or current version of the text. So that's basically the idea, but I didn't add that already, because the idea is that the text editor is also useful if you encounter a plain text file on the internet or on your hard drive or from wherever you get it, and you don't have the history tracked from my sort of editor and tools here. Then of course you are only faced with after the fact, like, I mean, that's like text out of the sky miraculously appearing, and like then you need to be able to convert it to a single edition that basically adds all of the text as one perfect edition basically, and then record your particular changes from there, or maybe not even do that, but just record the changes and publish them independently. So you could publish it as an annotation, or like if a writer works with an editor on a book and they have to like, or if I'm sort of correcting text of somebody else, I might just send these change instructions for somebody to look through, and then with the merging and sorting they could sort of decide what to keep and what to omit. And like these are reasons why the text editor is a little bit like sort of rudimentary in terms of like using it for the way people are used to these editors. And if I have file open dialogues or menus or however that's done, and if I need to start to have like version controlled, revision controlled text files, then of course I need to think a little bit about resource handling, file storage, data storage, and stuff like that, and also an infrastructure and architecture for the semantics of these resources, and also for identifiers for retrieval. And of course I have some components for that already, which are sort of like, that would be interesting to combine them. But if I start to do work on that part, that basically means that I would need to start working on the general hypertext engine, and like that's like the main core that like sort of does the not like an operating system, but basically like managing the resources and calling the right applications based on the semantic format declarations and identifiers and all of that, and like doing the like resource and data storage organization, and that's not too difficult. I mean, my sort of node-based or workflow-based approach here is a little bit that needs improvement and work, and also need to experiment a little bit how that could work in like a practical application. On the other hand, like, I mean, I can also imagine to make it scriptable. I could also imagine to make it into a virtual space or workspace where you would basically navigate through these files, and also things you retrieve from external resources that get downloaded, imported into sort of like this, and then you would be able to call the change tracking editor to make changes to these, and then it would either automatically know where to publish it, or you could set the policy to publish it only to your server and stuff like that. And that but the core and the engine, sort of, if scriptable or not, or if data-driven event triggered based on your navigation or commands or something like that, that's something that's still missing to combine some of these tools into a more integrated system that can, like Hypertext system, that can do these kind of things. And I am not too sure if I should start work on that already. The idea with the optimizer was to have it ready to encourage writers to use the tool with less need to have all of their key punches observed, and some of it optimized. And I mean, that's like, I'm not at, I didn't reach that goal yet, because as it is quite obvious, too much of like too much of the things here can still be read from the change instructions if they are apart from each other, if they are not subsequent in chronological sequence, and then still can be observed, and some people might object to it and not like it. So that's why I need the aggressive optimization maybe so that people can feel more comfortable with using the tracking. And of course they can always keep the full recording on their own machine and only publish the optimized version. That's perfectly imaginable, right? So that they can use it for branching and merging and have it as a repository of their, if they need to recover some portion they deleted some time ago or just recently, then they can always recover all of that. But in the published version, it looks like they're like perfect writers. And that's basically, like, as Matthew Kirschenbaum indicates, that's sort of like the whole point of word processors, right? Because like with data processing and word analogously, like all the word perfect, like the idea is to offer the, like, in contrast to the typewriter, you never want to see the typex and like removal and changes, but you want to give the impression with digital editing and writing. You want, like, people wanted to give the impression that they were able and like able to, technically able and also able to afford a secretary that would write a perfect business letter or promotional piece or something like that in one go perfectly. So that's basically the idea behind it. And I don't care about that theme too much. I'm more about loss and like preservation of, and like also like writing and keeping the versions and publishing change recommendations, even if the original source doesn't want to cooperate. You know, if it's like a document, like text on a remote website or server, I still want to be able to publish change instructions on how, like, what could be changed, even if the original server doesn't want to accept my changes. So they could be on my website and somebody could pull in the original text and my recommendations and then either look at it unmodified or with my recommendations and decide to publish the changed version or the like whatever. Like these are sort of like the potential future applications and use cases there. And other than that, I mean, there are some other text related and media related projects I might start. I think for this, yeah, I mean, like, it's, I guess I have to, I think the most important thing to work on would be something that allows people to open existing text versions, either by text that doesn't have any history or existing change instructions that would allow, basically working on the workflow that would allow people to recreate the last version they have written with the editor and then record new change instructions and save it to the original file, because that allows me and people to continue to work on their existing texts without the manual work of basically copying the files around manually, even if I don't do it with the Hypertext system engine, but as a standalone editor tool, that would be already helpful enough. So you and that probably helps a little bit for to start experimentation with more practical use of the editor by other people. I mean, and even I mean, it's also inconvenient for myself, but I just didn't do it yet because I want to do it properly with the engine, but there's nothing wrong with doing it a little bit earlier as a separate thing. And what I also need to do, like this is basically browser based, this renderer of the versions. I need to make this as a native Java application tool because I'm off of the browser. I don't want to use the browser with all of the like that's not there are many problems with that in itself. So of course, and that's why I was writing the for most interesting reasons and strange, you know, sort of like I was writing the reverse parser, the reverse streaming API for XML to read XML backwards, and you know, with destructive delete instructions to make like the previous button possible without the need to keep all these changes in memory, and that's like crazy in itself. And then I need to complete it in C++ and then port it to Java, and then continue writing the GUI, graphical user interface. I already started all of that a little bit, so it's a little bit probably problematic to continue that on stream, because who would care if they cannot see how I started it? So there's no chronological progression in there. But I mean, maybe on silent streams, or just as I do here with a lot of talking. But these are things that are pending, even if it's not about other text and media related, hypertext and hypermedia related projects, right? Or groupware projects even. Yeah, but that's basically, I mean, in this session there wasn't like a lot of coding in there, but I wanted to basically describe the current state and how I might continue from here. And so I'm sort of not like, depending on what people say, it depends what project to continue next on the stream. Yeah, I mean, there are loads of things that could be done, but that's basically for it for now. For the optimizer, I guess I should experiment a little bit with it, like test it a little bit more myself, and then finally release the current state of the code on the GitLab repository and basically package it, and so then it's available in there, and then I can later add more optimization approaches and strategies and options to it. Yeah, but that's basically for the optimizer for now. I now have it. I can extend it. It does something reasonable. I might very well use it for my own publications of change instructions, and that's basically it for now. Okay.